Hey, kings and queens, welcome to the Moody Millennial, the podcast where we dive deep into the nitty gritty of handling emotions when life throws its curveballs. We're all about the real stuff here, unpacking how the baggage we carry influences our relationships, self expression, and even our personal brand. Stick around and I'll help you connect the dots between who you are and where you want to be. I'm Pri Muko, and this is the Moody Millennial. Hey, kings and queens. Welcome to today's episode, the very first episode of the Moody Millennial podcast. I've always wanted to have a platform where I could talk about self-awareness and emotional intelligence and help millennials connect the dots between their complexes, emotional triggers, and how these affect their relationships, communication, and self-leadership. This podcast doesn't just address the professional challenges that you face in your life in those areas, it also addresses the personal. We'd be kidding ourselves if we thought that our professional lives are not influenced by our personal challenges. They definitely are. Today we're going to start by talking about the elephant in the room. Complexes. What are those exactly? In millennial terms, a complex is simply the emotional baggage that we've been carrying around with us since childhood. They are a huge bundle of ideas and emotions that have a huge impact on our psychological development, a huge negative impact. The emotional baggage we carry can turn a minor hiccup into a major storm. They are emotional and mental patterns that we develop from the experiences that we've been through in life, and those experiences are typically negative. It could start with growing up in a household where you were never encouraged, never appreciated, never taught how to express yourself or how to create your own personal identity. When you're growing up, you may or may not realize how important that kind of positive nurturing is for you until you become an adult and you're thrust into a world where people are different. There's so much stimulation in the positive and the negative, maybe if we're honest, more so the negative. And you start finding yourself in situations where you feel negatively triggered by what is happening, by how you're being treated, how you're being talked, and something is part of you that shouldn't be. Complexes form negative patterns in our thoughts and emotions, and they influence the way that we behave. When I was growing up, my dad used to tell me all the time, I'm the best out there. I'm the very best at everything I do. I'm better than everybody else out there, and I'm smarter than everybody in the room. Growing up as a firstborn girl, that really instilled a lot of confidence in me, even in situations where I was not sure about what I was doing or even why I was there. But I was able to turn around situations to my benefit by applying myself to the best of my ability because my dad had told me that I'm the best. This had a detrimental effect on me when I grew up, though, because it became less about confidence and more about pride, more about arrogance. And it came out in my relationships. It came out in the teamwork I would do with other people. Until I had developed this idea that I was better than everybody in the room. I was smarter than everybody, and I carried myself that way. And that had a negative effect on how I related with others, how I built relationships, how I connected. Because people saw me as stuck up, arrogant, and rightfully so, because that's how I was behaving. My dad was a very strong influence in my life growing up and all the way into adulthood. And I really valued his opinion of me, his good word of me. And if I didn't get it, I felt disappointed. I felt crushed. I felt like I had failed massively. So knowing his value in me was based on my doing my best. That was how I understood it at the time. It always had me applying myself to do my very best. And while this was good on paper, in terms of getting good grades at school or getting good reports in my performance reviews at work, for my relationships and my personal brand, this wasn't helping at all. A little humility would have done me a lot of good. This is an example of a complex because complexes are formed when a strong emotional experience, or one that is repeated many times, produces a pattern in your mind. This pattern in your mind results in behavior and habits. They become behavior and habits that you exhibit in every situation or in some situations. These patterns also form your beliefs and expectations about yourself. In the field of psychoanalysis, complexes are seen as opposite to our basic drives, which means that if you didn't have this complex, it might not form who you are at all. It might not be part of your personality or your character, but because it exists and because it feels contrary to what's normal, quote unquote normal, and it feels contrary to what you feel you would rather be doing if you didn't have it, then it's defined as a complex. So our complexes, they mess with our thoughts, emotions, and how we behave. And they totally shape how we see ourselves, how we see other people, how we interact with the world. And they're like these funky filters that totally distort our perspective. With some self-awareness and building up your emotional resilience, you'll be able to manage these and even overcome them with constant practice, because it's about reshaping the way that you think. When a complex is triggered, your thoughts, feelings, and behavior react in flight, or denial about the reality that you're experiencing. So you can go into fight or flight mode. You can fight in the situation that you're in, or run away from it, or just deny it's even happening, pretend it doesn't even exist or it never happened to you. These types of reactions influence the way that you communicate with people, the way you express yourself, the way that you interact with the people you share relationships with, the way that you self-lead, the way that you approach your goals. When a complex is triggered, it makes you feel like your emotions are bigger than you, like everything you're feeling is too much. You're overwhelmed. And you feel like you either need to release it, and that is expressed in angry outbursts, being very emotional, bursting out in tears, which are all okay. Those are all human reactions. But when it's coming from a complex, it's triggered by specific situations that are unique to each person. For example, your complex might be you don't like to be told what to do. And every time you're in a situation where somebody is telling you what to do, you always feel some type of way. You might challenge their position. You might ignore them completely. You might be indifferent or react stubbornly, telling yourself, I'm not going to do what they're saying because they don't have any right to tell me what to do. And that might be true. It might be true that they don't have any right to tell you what to do. But how you react to it is because you're triggered by the fact that they have, in your mind, the audacity to tell you what to do. Or your complex might be the exact opposite. When somebody tells you what to do, when somebody appears aggressive, or their personality feels stronger than yours, and you feel like you can't resist them, you feel trapped, you feel afraid, you feel attacked. And that might be because in your past, you had authority figures in your life who treated you that way, and it left an emotional scar on you where it hurt you. And every time somebody is aggressive towards you, it makes you feel afraid. It makes you feel powerless. So maybe you shut down. Maybe you run away from the situation or run away from that person. Maybe you freeze in place and you feel trapped, so you don't know how to move, how to speak, how to defend yourself, how to get away from that situation. And even though you might be aware of where this is coming from and why you feel this way, and even though you know you have just one or two things that maybe you feel you're able to do to protect yourself, and that's usually fighting, fleeing, or pretending it didn't happen, you don't know how to empower yourself so it doesn't happen to you again. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So here's a few of the ways that complexes affect your communication, relationships, and your personal brand, because your personal brand is about your ability to self-lead and about how you carry yourself through challenges, through problems, because it's so easy to sail through the good times. What could go wrong about a good thing? But we all know that the world is not so black and white. It's possible to have both positive and negative feelings about one situation or one person or one thing. So how complexes affect our communication or our ways of expressing ourselves, they silence your authenticity. When you don't understand how you feel or why you feel a certain way, it makes it difficult for you to express yourself, to be real with yourself, because you don't really know what that is. Complexes have a negative impact on your creativity or your ability to innovate. It's really hard to consider new things or new opportunities or how you can express yourself creatively when you're constantly dealing with just trying to survive how you feel right now. They make it really difficult to make decisions. For you to make a decision that you're confident in, you have to be confident in how you feel about it. And that's hard to do when your complexes are muddying up the waters. Your complexes might make you feel like there's so much that you can't share, that you can't put out into the world, that you can't bring into your relationships or into how you express yourself because you're afraid of being judged. They can also make it difficult for you to set boundaries and keep them. In your relationships, you probably see a lot of communication breakdown. Maybe you withdraw and isolate yourself in conflicts instead of staying put to see them through or talk them through. They impact your ability to empathize with other people because complexes have a way of making us feel or appear self-absorbed because our emotions constantly feel so strong, it's distracting, makes it hard to look out and consider things from other people's points of view. This creates a lot of tension and conflict and puts a strain on your support systems. People don't know how to be there for us when our complexes are making us so unpredictable. We appear unpredictable and unreliable because we don't have a handle on how we feel ourselves, much less how to express this or share this with others. Because the people in our lives can't read our minds, they can only see the outward expression of what's going on within us, and that's not always clear, especially when we don't even know what's happening. Complexes make it really hard to be consistent, to show up consistently, to see things through, to be authentic and genuine, to be responsible, and all of these things negatively impact our personal brands. In the coming episodes, I'm going to talk about all of these things in more detail. The most important thing I wanted to share with you today is that this is all normal. Yes, it doesn't feel normal, and gray areas are so confusing, but it's so normal to have these things because we're human. It's just called being hurt. This is what pain looks like when it sits with us for a long time and it starts affecting how we connect with the world and how we live our lives. It feels difficult to take responsibility for these things because it always feels like these are things that were done to us. People talk to us in rude or hurtful ways. They treated us in unnecessarily painful ways. Because these are not things that we choose for ourselves. We don't choose to hurt ourselves and inflict this kind of damage on our mindsets. Honestly, closure is not always enough. The people who hurt you can apologize until the sun goes down. It still won't change the fact that it happened and that it continues to affect you. The very first step in growing, in changing and healing is acceptance. That's a hard thing to do, accepting the things that you cannot change, especially when they weren't of your doing. Here are 5 practical steps that you can apply to accept how you feel and accept that it's valid. First one, be honest. Be honest with yourself about how you feel. Fighting your feelings, trying to run away from them, trying to ignore that they're there, will only find you dealing with them tomorrow and the day after, the week after, the year after. And the longer you continue to fight them, flee from them, or ignore them, the more deeply, the more negatively they influence and impact your communication, your ability to self-lead yourself at work, at home, in your relationships. Secondly, write down the reasons for the good feelings and accept those reasons. Even if it's about somebody or something that you don't like or that's giving you so many conflicting emotions, write down the good things and accept them. And when I say write down the good things, I don't mean write down the good feelings. I mean write down the good facts behind those feelings. Number 3, write down the reasons for the bad things and accept them. You might have both negative and positive feelings about a certain person or a certain thing or situation, or even a certain desire that you have in your life, or even habits, the bad feelings around those things or that person, and accept that they exist. Accept that you feel that way about it. Now for the bad things, the bad facts, write down what is your ideal reality for each thing. You might be in a relationship with somebody who loves and respects you, and they care about you, but they just don't understand you because you're not able to express yourself to them in the way that matters. The good fact is you're in a relationship with somebody who loves and respects you and who accepts you the way that you are, even though they don't understand you. Without your ability to express yourself to them and share your feelings and share your experiences and your challenges, you don't see this relationship going very far because you won't be able to grow with them. Your ideal reality could be you want to have a deeper connection and a more meaningful relationship with this person and still have them accept you as you are with your challenges that you are working through. So step 5 would be plan the steps towards your ideal reality and action them. Your first step could be exactly what we've talked about: writing down the good, writing down the bad, and writing down your ideal reality. Your next step could be looking for a therapist or looking for a couples coach, or sitting down and having a candid conversation with your person and sharing with them how you feel, why you feel that way, and what kind of reality you'd like to have, and asking for their support. You might share with them the trauma or the complexes that you have experienced in your life and how they are affecting your ability to connect and relate with them. Your ideal reality and the steps to your ideal reality might differ from everybody else, and that's okay, because this is about what is best for you. Only when you accept how you feel about something is when you'll be able to deal with it and heal from it. So today we've talked about what complexes are, how they're formed, and why they make us feel like our emotions are bigger than us. We've talked about how they impact our communication, our self-expression, relationships, and our self-leadership. And I've given you 5 easy, practical tips on how to accept your emotions, process them, and start creating your ideal reality. Healing from our complexes and growing up from them and moving on from them can take time. It can take you a week, it could take you a few months, it could take you a couple years, and that's okay. The most important thing is healing and growing from them. On that note, to all of you beautiful people who subscribe to this podcast and join me in this episode, I have a free gift for you. I've created a self-coaching course called the Self-Sense Pro Guide to Emotional Intelligence, where I take you on a step-by-step process of how to identify and understand your complexes, how they influence your life, and how you can apply your core values to transform the narrative that you're living with now. This course is normally $350, but I wanted to gift it to you for free so that you can experience self-coaching and take yourself on a journey of discovering who you are and the life that you would rather have. If you felt like I've spoken to you today and you want to dig deeper into this, go grab your seat on the Self-Sense Pro, A Guide to Emotional Intelligence, link in the show notes. This is free for one more day until November the 15th at midnight East Africa time. Inside the package is a bonus 90-minute one-on-one coaching session with me, where I'll help you connect the dots between your complexes and your core values and how you can use them to transform your decision-making for yourself. Thanks for joining me here today, Royals. Stay tuned for more real talk on the Moody Millennial.